I'm Lisa Saby, a film producer. A year ago, due to COVID, we had to cancel the theatrical debut of our latest film, American Tragedy. Instead, it went straight to streaming online. It became one of our distributors' most watched documentaries. Perhaps it was because our documentary was about coping with tragedy, from school shootings to suicides. And right now, the world is dealing with one of the biggest shared tragedies in history. The mental health ramifications are unknown. And so, as a team of filmmakers, we decided to sponsor an event to kick off Mental Health Awareness Month. We reached out to mental health allies around the world, and their response has been amazing. Tonight, we're going to hear from top influencers and leading experts. They have agreed to participate for one reason: mental health matters now more than ever.
People have been without touch. I know several friends who have not touched another person in over a year. Touched another person. I know couples who are separated and have not been able to get back together because of all kinds of restrictions, let alone people who've lost people. After this pandemic crisis, there is going to be need on massive scale, for treatments for loneliness, for post-trauma, for relationship repair, for depression, for anxiety, for stress management. It's not the chosen few. It's everyone, and we really need to think about how we can address everyone.
Our people have been through a very traumatic year with the pandemic, and then having to cope with the terrible losses.
It's just been a really hard year, and now going into the second year, and we don't know how long it's going to take to recover or what recovery would look like for people, for their mental health, for their physical health.
Loneliness is a big issue. And it's one that I think we haven't fully appreciated as a public health problem.
Chronic loneliness has the same impact on our health and longevity as smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It's that damaging, and yet it's not something people recognize as physically dangerous or as emotionally dangerous, and it's both. Once you feel it, you feel as if you've just been rejected by everyone you know. You feel as if for every moment the phone isn't ringing with a text from somebody saying, "Hey, how are you?" Everyone you know is disappointing you and rejecting you because why aren't they reaching out?
It's hard to overstate how lonely this time has been for so many people, and we want to acknowledge that. If you're having a hard time, we see you. We feel deep compassion for you. We want you to know that you are not alone. And we want you to have hope. And we want you to know that there is good news. There are reasons to have hope and optimism.
We are ripe now, as a global society, for change more than we have been ever. When there is a crisis, when there is trauma, when there's tragedy, when there is upheaval, it breaks the fragments of our normal existence. It shatters our norms. It throws us into crisis. People tend to change most when they're in crisis. I think the last disruption of this magnitude was World War II, except people were on opposing sides. We have all, for the first time, come shoulder to shoulder against a common foe that truly disrupted the societal way of life. And so now we are all in crisis, but in the same crisis, where there's not a bad one and a good one. We are all in this together. This is the ripest time for change that you can imagine.
If we all can understand that we have experienced something together, we have all lost something in this time.
That seems like that could only be a good thing, that we're all being forced to talk about it because it's kind of ever present for every citizen. I feel like I have these conversations a lot talking about, this desire to get back to normal, but why normal? Normal was crummy for so many people. How can we be better than what was normal pre-pandemic?
Right, there's not a return to normalcy. It should be a return to a new. Like, what could we do with the ability of this phoenix that has dramatically shifted and changed our world? And what can we as conduits, as constituents of this world, be able to do to make it better? That is the launching forward.
We now are coming out of the pandemic. We have a vaccine. We have treatments. We know so much more than we knew at this time last year. As we get to the place where we can be together again. We need to do that. And we need to then take those opportunities to help those who need help, those who are struggling.
You know, we can't do this in isolation. I mean, we can do it in isolation. We can just try to, you know, make ourselves feel better all by ourselves, but it's much harder. You don't get any reward for taking way longer and also going through a lot more pain to be able to help yourself to feel better again.
Our goal here tonight is to celebrate the advances that have been made around mental health during this year, to cheer the contributions of so many different people, researchers and therapists, innovators and policymakers, influencers and entertainers, teachers, parents, teenagers, people at every level of society have worked hard through the duration of the pandemic to make the world a healthier, happier place. So let's start by celebrating teenagers, young adults, and students who have been grappling with loneliness and anxiety and who are working hard for their mental health.
There's a really good friend of mine who died by suicide, and he was also a singer, and when he and I would hang out, he would show me some of his songs and we would kind of talk about the albums that we wanted to make. And at the time I hadn't signed to a label, or I hadn't really started my career as a singer. When I was writing this song, this was kind of the first time that I was, I think, really grappling with James's death. And I say my cousin died, but I still feel his arms when I cry. And I'm a pretty spiritual person, and so I do feel like right then I was feeling like James' presence. And in the song I say, walk yourself home, stop retching now, dry your hair and wipe your mouth, say out loud to yourself, I'm clean, I'm clean. And to me, it was almost like, instead of a message to myself, it was almost like through James, I was communicating a message to anyone who listens to my music and saying enough is enough at some point. You've been so self-destructive, you've been so sad, at some point you need to stand up and, wipe your mouth and say I'm gonna get help. I'm gonna walk myself home. I'm gonna get myself out of here.
I hope my car breaks down so I can get out. Find a curve and scream. I'm so sorry for everything. My cousin died, but I still feel his arms when I cry. Know your arms alright? What if dying is just driving into light and we drive?
I would just say, for me and a lot of people my age, we just get so used to living with mental illness, and we get so used to living with our disorders and our diseases and our diagnoses that we become functional at a certain level. And we just tell ourselves, this is just how I am. This is just how my life is. I'm always going to feel this way. I'm always going to feel sad. I'm always going to get manic every couple of weeks. I just have to live like this. There is a lot of courage in that, a lot of courage in waking up every day and surviving, living with your illnesses. And so many people are just doing that. And I think that's cool and respectable. But I would just, I think, want to say, you are worth the help that you need. I guess if this resonates with you, it's probably time to maybe step up and try and get a little more of the help that you need, because our lives don't have to stay at this quality. I really do think there are resources available where we can survive at a higher quality of life. And I think everyone who hears this is worth it and deserves it and should do it, because that's how we can, share love and light with other people.
The first thing that I feel like people should know is that they are worthy of support. They are worthy of a life which is fully lived, not one where they have to constantly battle traumas and depression.
I feel incredibly hopeful with the young generation.
Young people today, particularly, it's growing weekly. They want to talk about their mental wellness and their mental health. They want to say in the services that that are provided by their schools.
They are not happy with the status quo, which is a good thing, especially around mental health. I am very curious and hopeful to see what comes of the kids that were in high school, that were in middle school, that were in college during COVID, because I think in 2 years, it'll be really interesting to see how they take those experiences and what they transform that into in terms of change and progress.
Hurrah for young people who advocate for their mental wellness. There's so many exciting developments in K-12 mental health right now. Here are some that we are excited about. Recently, youth in Colorado worked to allow excused absences for mental health days. Littleton Academy couldn't afford another counselor, so they hired Bryce Jackman. Bryce goes on walks with students who are feeling anxious or having behavioral issues. As featured in American Tragedy, Dawson School has a mental health curriculum that includes mindfulness and growth mindset. Over the pandemic, Bond Together created videos that help children participate in joyful movement and mindfulness exercises. Mental wellness needs to be a subject in school, just like math. We are constantly impressed by the creativity of people to support mental wellness, and change isn't just happening at schools. Here are some innovators who are bringing mental wellness into your home.
You are tired, overwhelmed, maybe even feeling at your wit's end. The toddler stage and all its busyness and loudness and pushback and meltdowns and chaos, it's a lot to handle.
If you have days where you think this is not what I signed up for, you're in good company.
And remember this, there is no better mom or dad on this whole planet for your kid than you. Trust that.
We at COAM know that prisons are built off of third grade test reading scores. The data shows that if we're able to understand or rectify or see what is happening in a child's life 0 to 3, they're more likely to become successful from the age of 3 to 18.
We have a huge place in our heart for supporting parents to teach and model mental wellness. That's been the mission of our organization and all of our work from the beginning.
When I was a young mother, I rescued my daughter. When she spotted a spider crawling on the wall, she screamed. I still remember the tone, the note, the echo. But what I remember most was the silence. I ran to her side, smushed the spider with a tissue and threw it down the toilet. It wasn't dangerous, but I did that and more because I never wanted my daughter to be afraid. It didn't work. She had bad dreams and hated being alone. So I bought her a dog so that she would never be alone. She told me later, it wasn't my fault. At any time, 18% of the population is dealing with anxiety. It would have happened to her no matter what I did. She could be right. Still, I wondered if I could have done things differently. And so I began to study child development and psychology, saying to myself that it was an exercise in regret. That if I could go back, I would, but I can't. When I became a grandmother, I wanted more for my granddaughter. When she spotted a spider on the floor, she pointed and screamed, and I can still remember the tone, the note, the echo. But what I remember most is how it sounded like my own daughter. I didn't kill the spider, not this time. It was brown and round and harmless. Are you scared? I asked. Yes, she said. I took her hand and stepped toward it. One step, and then another, and there it was, just a dot. Look how small, I said, and look how big your shoe is. You don't have to be afraid, not of that spider. And she stomped on it. Perhaps we should have taken it outside, let it live. But that's not what we did, and that's not the point of the story. The point of the story is that there is a difference between fear and danger. Fear is danger perceived. It's a sleight of hand where a ball is cast under cups, and if the child never learns what's real and what's not, they will come to believe it's all real. That fear is danger, and the world is a scary place. And so, I don't rescue my granddaughter. Not from fears. It's what experts call empowering. If kids can rescue themselves, let them.
COVID has taught us that mental and emotional well-being is a universal need, and therefore it should be considered in every aspect of society, at school, at home, and at work.
As parents, many of us, most of us are also working. We work with corporations to create a culture that supports psychological safety, that supports having conversations around mental health so that there's less stigma and more comfort. We need to start looking at mental health. We need some really progressive leaders who have that courage to be vulnerable and talk about their own anxiety sometimes, talk about their own struggles, whether it's family members or themselves.
Future innovations in mental wellness should increase due to unprecedented government support.
Certainly within the mental health space, that we are seeing new investment like we've never seen from the federal government. We have the tools and we have the solutions at hand. It's now really an implementation challenge. It's figuring out a way to get the things that work to the people who need them when they need them in a way that they like them.
We want to share some of the mental health innovations for everyone that we're excited about. All of them are accessible to you today. They reach you where you are, at your phone, on your social media, in your email, to help you find help and happiness. But this is just a small list of the many incredible resources available. So please tag your favorite mental health helps in the comments.
The thing that we faced when we started Humanist was we thought, oh gosh, people have plenty of ways to connect. We don't need to provide new social media. But when we began to look at what people were getting from Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and even Twitch now, it wasn't great. Those sites, which could have been the source for so much social, emotional, cognitive support, became really toxic environments. This opportunity to build out platforms where people can not only get help, but you can give help. For us, one of the biggest discoveries has been that giving help is incredibly empowering. All of us struggle, and to take those struggles and use them to help others is one of the most therapeutic activities that, by the way, traditional mental health care doesn't really engage. I think we have a chance to really make a difference and help people pull themselves out of the funk that so many of us have been in over this last year.
We can actually start to help people to access support, which goes beyond themselves through digital transformation, which has happened due to the COVID situation. So HowMental actually started on Instagram. The idea was to bring together people, advocates, and organizations across the mental health sector so that we could unite our voices instead of having them be these kind of dissipated, separate, singular voices here, there, and everywhere. We wanted everyone to be able to kind of come together and sing from the same hymn sheet. That would be self-care, that would be community support, and that would be professional help. And so for HowMental, it's about how can we make these kinds of support accessible no matter what time it is, no matter where you are on the planet. And so that's what HowMental does. And on Instagram, we are now a community of over 600,000 followers. We reach over 5 million people every single week.
So one big change that COVID has brought is that it has helped everyone to become more familiar with the telehealth platform. While I'm very, very excited to be returning to in-person for all sorts of things, there is a reason to keep some of our medical and therapeutic services to be virtual. So I want to tell you a little bit why we actually think that virtual may be best when it comes to treating eating disorders. Eating disorders require an entire village to recover. We ask people to bring their entire family, whatever family means to them. I could not imagine getting my sister-in-law and my brother and my mother and my spouse to all make it to an appointment at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday at a brick and mortar location, having to deal with traffic and find parking and leaving their job early. Something that just isn't possible. But with teletherapy, you are truly able to bring your entire village to treatment with you. We have had parents call in from construction sites. We've had parents call in from carpool pickup lanes. People are able to call in wherever they are at, and it ends up being much more inclusive. I really hope that this model does start getting adapted for all mental illnesses. Getting over any mental health disorder is difficult. You're going to have urges. If you're struggling with depression, you're going to have an urge to stay in bed. If you're struggling with substance use, you're going to have an urge to drink. And if you're struggling with eating disorders, you might be having the urge to restrict. That's a normal part of any mental health disorder. It is an enormous, Herculean even task to ask just a single individual to fight all of their urges by themselves. Instead, by bringing in family, we're able to ask them to set up the home for pro-health behaviors. I think that would just make a tremendous, tremendous difference.
We are so inspired by all these movers and shakers and their contributions. And we're also inspired by all of you and your desire and your work for your own mental health, your children's mental health, and your community's mental health.
We have to think outside of the box and think about how to expand what resources even means.
It's all about increasing accessibility and making mental health a continuous part of everyone's life. You know, it's not just your priority when you're feeling at your very lowest, it's your priority continuously.
I hope that in this time as we launch and think about what we can do, it's about that reset and starting over and the dismantling of what we knew and the building of what we want. We get to be architects of what the future holds for our community in the space of mental health, in the space of community development, but more importantly, in the space of love. And that to me is the launching forward.
We got this.
Now more than ever, is everyone aware that that kind of matters. Even people who used to wave their hands at me, and people did, and say, yeah, feelings don't matter, they're not real, they don't really matter. Even those people are now on the page of, maybe they do. They kind of do. I've been locked up with my family for a year. It kind of feels like they matter now. So we have an opportunity to, as a society, which means both as individuals and as groups, to really do something we've never been able to do before. And that is start paying as much attention to our emotional health as we do to our physical health.
We're ending today by inviting you to do something now for your mental health.
Gratitude exercises have been found to be extremely effective for mood, for outlook, for optimism, for regulating emotions, for a lot of different things. Been researched a lot, highly effective, such a simple thing. Have 3 things that you're grateful for each day. Write about them or tell them to another person and explain why. I am truly grateful on a daily basis, and I will be forever, for the health of my health and the health of my loved ones and my dear ones. I am truly grateful for being able to work when so many have lost their jobs. I truly am. I don't take it for granted. I know a lot of people who had great jobs who lost them and who are really challenged. I'm truly grateful for every opportunity I get, or for every person I get to speak to and learn from. When I go to the movies for the first time, I will be truly grateful for that. When I do everything for the first time, I'll be grateful, and I will make sure to say a little note to myself before I go in. Don't take it for granted you can be around these people in this way. There was a long time in which you couldn't.
I reached out on Facebook to see if anyone could think of anything they were grateful for from their own pandemic experience. The comments blew up. Here are some of my favorite responses. As we think about what Minds After COVID means, a necessary start is to look back at your experience of COVID, acknowledge the hard parts, but also express gratitude for the good parts, sincere gratitude. We invite everyone watching to start now to prepare not just for a new normal, but a space of more happiness, more love, more light. Bring change to your life, your homes, your workplaces, your schools. You can start by following BrainFit, HowMental, Big Little Feelings, Equip, Humanest, MindWise, and Sophie Blair. And by watching American Tragedy, available free on Amazon Prime. Thank you all for coming. We wish you peace, happiness, and hope.
Committing to BrainFit has the power to change our world. We as individuals, families, groups, and organizations need to understand and implement brain fitness into our daily lives. Brain fitness is based on learnable skills that build on each other. They have the power to transform our lives, families, societies, and even generational patterns to create a culture of connectedness, hope, and resilience.